Good morning. My name is Carrie Palaio, and I am the Executive Director of the Greater Utica Chamber of Commerce and your host for the Leveling Up podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by EJA Moving, Delta Hotels, and Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield. I am here today for a very special episode with my friend and guest, Dr. Anthony M. Baird, who is the Chief Diversity Officer and Vice President of Student Transition and Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at Utica University. That's quite a mouthful to remember this very important title and position that he holds. Dr. Baird was a student at Utica when it was Utica College and returned back here about a year and a half, 2 years ago? 2 years ago now. And we're here today to talk about not only his role at Utica University, but also the Utica Community Partners DEI Community Partnerships Unity March, which is happening tomorrow, Thursday, April 21st at 5 o'clock p.m. So we're going to talk a little bit about, Dr. Baird's role here and the Unity March. So welcome, Dr. Baird.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you started, your journey in Utica started as a student 30-something years ago.
Just about 31 years ago.
Yeah,
yes.
And tell us a little bit about, your experience at Utica College and what drew you back here.
What drew me back here? So, so I was in the class of 1991, left the area in 1993. I worked at Mohawk Valley Community College. I worked while I was in school at the House of Good Shepherd, upstate Cerebral Palsy, a number of different spaces, Saving Banks of Utica. And then I got an opportunity at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth in 1993. I ended up there, stayed 26 years, retired in 2019, and decided I was going to launch my
retirement career.
Yeah, I was going to be a motivational speaker, consultant, and coach. I saw myself on the stage delivering positive messages around educational and personal and professional development. And the last place I presented was at Dell Technologies. And shortly thereafter, we were hit with the COVID pandemic. And then I took my business online. Mm-hmm. And while in that space, I was the convocation speaker at the university. I was the MC for our 30th anniversary of Kwanzaa celebration, and I was the host for the 50th anniversary of BSU. It was in that space that I came in contact with my mentor, Elaine Varga, and Mark Kovacs. I met the president, Dr. Laura Casamento, and we got to talking, and they told me this position was posted, and should I take a look at it? I did, and dropped my name in the hat and went through that arduous process of interviewing and searching, and I was fortunate enough to be the candidate they selected.
Fantastic. And so what do you do in that role at Utica University?
I do a lot of different things. As the Chief Diversity Officer at the college, helping the college positions itself for greater equity and inclusion among the stakeholders in that space, our faculty, students, and staff. Wanted to create a community of belongingness and making sure that we created an infrastructure where once you walk away from that space, it's stake whole. And so we created a student advisory group, we created the collaborative, we created a faculty institutional priority organization in that space, and we put on programs from time to time. We look at strategic plans, we look at our operational plans, we try to make sure that the operational plan is aligned with our strategic plan. I also have the very fortunate opportunity to work in our career development space. Our Career Readiness Center is actually named after one of our alums, the Jeremy Thurston Center for Career Readiness. And in that space, we're looking at 4 different pillars. We're looking at our pioneer pitching, engaging the students from the beginning of the funnel. Mm-hmm. We're looking at our career development as another vertical. We're looking at campus employment as the intentional space for our students to learn what it means to be a professional sooner rather than later. And most recently, we just launched our beta testing around our employability fit pitch challenge. And the idea there is that students would demonstrate a level of readiness before they transition into the world of work. So there are a number of fun things that we do in that space, but the goal is to create the right community so all students, faculty, and staff can thrive.
Yeah, and so you've just gone through a transition. You used to be known as Utica College. Yeah. Now you're Utica University. So tell our listeners who may not know what the difference between college and university is and why it's so important to have that designation.
So it's interesting, right? I didn't have that vision. When I graduated, my degree said Utica College of Syracuse University. Yep. And while I was transitioning into this role, on LinkedIn, I changed my title to Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Vice President in Utica College. And shortly in February 15th or 16th, we got the designation as university. The difference is it's really about the number of master's degree programs that we have. It positions us as a research institution. It leverages our faculty talent. It creates opportunity for us to level up in terms of our ranking and our division levels in terms of our sportings and such, and those things are still being worked out. But I think it puts us on the national stage as a university, which means we have larger offerings, we have master's degree programs, and potentially more doctoral degree programs in the future.
Yeah, so that puts Utica itself on a national stage as well.
We are on the national stage, and we're in the national discourse among so many different things.
Yeah, so not only do you work at Utica University, but you started the Utica Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Community Partnerships, which is a collaboration of educational institutions and community partners, community organizations in the area. And you've done a couple of things through this group. And if you want to go through the members of the organization.
Yeah, so this group formed was born out of my recollection of, forming alliance with chief diversity officers. But it's before that, when we had our experiences as a community doing the march 31 years ago, when we experienced race and hate on our campus, we collaborated with schools such as Colgate, Hamilton, Mooresville, SUNY Poly, MVCC, to name a few. And I just wanted to reach back out to create an association for myself coming into the space as a chief diversity officer. I wanted to know who was who in those different spaces to form the collaboration. And from doing so, some could participate and then some could not. But out of that, you and I had met over a period of time, and we talked about doing something around diversity, inclusion, and business and industry and so forth. So over time, that group got melded together. And today, it consists of the Greater Chamber of Utica, the MVCAA, MVCC, SUNY Poly, and Utica University. The door is still open for other organizations to come on board. We have reached out to our partners at Herkimer and at Hamilton College. Getting on board at the time while we were moving so fast did not seem opportune. So going forward, we'll open up the doors for those things to happen. So the idea behind that group is to look at how we can be proactive in dealing with issues around social justice, economic justice, racial justice, and equity. And so it's in that space, in light of what happened with George Floyd and the number of incidences that we're seeing in our society, why not close the leadership gap and be proactive in how we respond to these issues that are still plaguing our society?
Yeah. So the first initiative that the group put together was a virtual talk by Ashley Ford, the author of Somebody's Daughter, and it was well attended, even though it was virtual, really kind of opening the conversation to people in the area to talk about the issues surrounding diversity, equity, inclusion. And we have a second event coming up tomorrow that we're here to talk about a little bit more today, which is the Unity March.
So the Ashley Ford piece really, it's a symbolic approach to what matters to us in the community. It's about literature and literacy and communication and conversation and stories and narratives, because we all have a story. And so her story set the stage for the work that we're going to do as a partnership, talking about her sexual assault and her father being in prison and how she learned from those stories. And she talks about grace and forgiveness. And so that's essentially where we are as a people. And she was kind of an example of how we might go forward, learning from each other through stories, showing grace and forgiveness as we come into work together. The second of our initiatives, as what I call the bookend events, is this Unity March that we're going to be doing on tomorrow. Buses are lining up at Utica University and other spaces. We're congregating at 1100 Miller Street, the cornerstone of MVCAA, and we're going to march 0.6 miles to City Hall.
Yep.
Again, the principle behind that is 31 years ago, 13 men of color, Latino, African American, and West Indian men received hate threats, death letters in their mailbox in respective spaces. I was the president of the Black Student Union and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated at that time, and we organized. We did not retaliate with anger and hate. We leveraged the leadership of our institution, President Simpson at the time, my leadership, and all the other students got together. We talked about what it is that we needed, what needed to be done, how can we be proactive, and we had all of our faculty and staff supporting us, namely Mr. Mark Kovacs and Elaine Varga. And so we organized a candlelight vigil, and we walked to City Hall. So this was another opportunity for us to resurrect that sentiment after 31 years ago, coming back in a positive way. So then I was a student, I was a senior, I'm about to leave today. I'm Dr. Anthony Baird. In spite of that hate, in spite of all of that, taking a positive outlook on these things, leveraging your resources, building allies, and taking a positive approach to some of these things. And we're hoping that this March will do that for us, notwithstanding the work that our community foundation and many other agencies have started in the Utica area.
Yeah, so speaking of the Community Foundation, we have to, give a shout out to them because they helped to sponsor the march tomorrow. So thank you very much to the Community Foundation for their efforts surrounding this initiative. But I also wanted to let people know that he mentioned that buses are on campus for students, but this is open to the public. And so you can head on down to 1100 Miller Street, which is Mohawk Valley Community Action Agency's location, and tell everybody what to expect when they get there. We'll be kind of arriving.
Right.
There will be materials available for people to make signs for the march if they choose, or they can bring them already.
Right.
Yeah. And then
that's really fun. So you can bring your own signs, march for your cause, keep it clean, keep it positive. We're marching for social justice. We're marching for racial justice. We're marching for equity, food insecurity, home insecurity. We're marching for equity. We're marching for the abled and the differently abled. Yeah. When you come down to that space, we will be gathering. We'll be lining up. You can make signs there. Like we said, bring your own signs. You'll be meeting colleagues and partners from different walks of life. We ask that we come together in a peaceful, organized manner, and let's put our energies in a positive way towards the change we want to see. So it's going to be a really good time for our energies to gel together. Notwithstanding the weather, right? We can brave the weather. I think the worst is behind us,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But we're going to march anyway.
Yep.
We're going to have some songs we can sing. There's some chants we're going to have. And then we'll take it to City Hall, where you will get, so we have water and we have snacks and those kind of things. We also have a pledge that we created that we'll ask the community and the public to sign off on. These documents will be placed in spaces like the City Hall, the mayor's area, maybe in the chamber, just representing our collective efforts and commitment to the change that we want to see. We have a great lineup of speakers in leadership roles. My very own dear Dr. Laura President Casamento will be taking the stage. A colleague and a friend of mine, Dr. Professor Clemmy Harris, Jawad, who's in the head of the Community Foundation. He serves on that board. Reverend Baugh, Randy Van Wagner, Dr. Mark Montgomery, and the list goes on and on. We have some great voices. Hilda is going to be back here to join us, and she's going to have a really powerful message at the end, and she's going to lead us in our pledge.
Yeah. So if you have trouble walking, or you may have a time crunch, and you really want to see all of these great speakers, what time should you arrive at City Hall?
You should arrive at City Hall at 6 o'clock. Okay. If you get there right around that time, we will be taking the stage. The groups would have gotten there. 6:30 okay. Will be a nice time to settle in. And then I will be the MC for that event and keeping things in order and moving it along. The goal is for us to get in and get out no later than 8 o'clock. We'll have the Utica Police is going to be there to support our efforts. We feel safe. I would be remiss if I didn't say our very own Mayor Perlini is going to be in that space as well.
Yep. So tell us, the other thing that we haven't talked about a little bit is kind of the subtitle of the march is giving voice to the voiceless. So tell me about the importance of that messaging and how this march will give voice to the voiceless.
So the optics that you might see, I want you to take away two of them. One is that members of our community are recognizing that these issues are important and they're prevalent to the kind of community we want to live in, grow in, learn in. For us, it's particularly important because as an anchored institution in the region, our students are living, learning, and working here. Our goal is for them to stay here and grow and raise their families to help to build the economic infrastructure here. But we also know that this is a refugee community, and not all of them have access to the resources or platforms where their concerns are being heard on a regular basis. And I'm not... It's not lost on me that coming from a third world country myself, Georgetown, Guyana, living in the Bronx, single mom, domestic violence in the home and the like, these are issues that are important to me, and I think they're important to people on the outside, but maybe their messages and voices not being heard. And so for us taking the streets in this way, giving attention to it, me talking about it now, is to say that they're important. And if one member in our community is not thriving properly, it significantly affects all members of that community. It's the same point that Dr. King says, injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. So it's that notion that we are picking up the mantle and carrying and giving a platform to the issues that they have, particularly around food and jobs and education and homelessness and the like that plagues the Utica area.
Yeah. And so if people are particularly interested in all of this that's happening tomorrow, where can they go for more information?
Well, they definitely can go to your website for more information. They can definitely go to the Community Foundation's website. They can go to the MVCAA website for more information. And you can give me a call on my cell phone. It's 508-954-7025. I would definitely be the purveyor and the conveyor to connect people with resources that are in the area. I just got back, and I'm really trying to add some value in any way I can do so. I would love to.
Yeah, and, it sounds like the first couple of years you've been here, been the pandemic, so you really haven't gotten, have you been impressed with the change that Utica, it's a different Utica than it was 30 years ago.
It's definitely a different Utica, and the potential for more and growth. This is what we're talking about, leadership, right? So you see and hear the voices of those leaders of this community. Education is really a critical piece. We want to create more access for those who are coming through. We want to make sure we're working with our teachers and parents to encourage their students to see the value of that. We have to make college more accessible, more affordable. We have to give people comparable wage for the work that they're doing as inflation raises. So there are issues here, but I know and I see the efforts that are being made. When I drive across the bridge and look around, I'm like, wow. Julie Andrews has nothing on me, right? Because here I am experiencing the space, but being an agent of change and working with others in a collaborative way to help lead and bring about that change. I think it's about leadership, being proactive, in fact, being preactive when these issues we know still exist.
Yeah. And if you're somebody who's just kind of sparked a little bit by these issues and maybe aren't aware that they're happening in our community, do you encourage those people to come on down too and learn more about what our community's like?
Everyone that has an issue or a concern or a passion, this is an opportunity for you to network, for you to identify the resources that are within your community. Last night, the Brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha, of which I'm a member, hosted a Voteless People is a Hopeless People seminar. The attendance was not what we wanted, but for no other reason, we're starting the conversation. We want people to understand their rights and the power and the sacrifice others have made for them to have that voice. And so voting is an important. There should be no barriers or restrictions to someone exercising that freedom to go to the ballot box. We need to make sure that that issue, that conversation is top of mind. So you have an issue, you have a concern, you want to network with your community leaders. That's the pace to come out, network, exchange some information, let them know how you want to be involved. And I'm sure there's somebody there going to point you in the right direction.
Perfect. Well, before we wrap up, this is called the Leveling Up Podcast.
Yes.
So I do like to ask my guests, in what ways recently have you had to level up, either personally or professionally? What have you done to get outside of your comfort zone, whether it's, coming out of the pandemic and getting more involved in the community in different ways, or something you've done at work? Listeners like to hear what people do to keep them growing.
It's what keep you growing. I love the notion of leveling up. I have a leveled up mindset. I'm about the mindset. I read. I have a voracious appetite for reading. I listen to podcasts. I'm on YouTube all the time. I meditate to make sure I get deep sleep, quick sleep, to maximize the work that I have to do. I rise early. I go to the gym. because my work is important. I'm very focused on helping my institution reach that goal, right? We are an example of what is possible in our communities. And I think being the best version of myself requires that I continue to work on myself. So my success is always on the construction, and I listen and learn from those who are ahead of me, as well as going back into the community and giving back and reminding myself on where I came from.
Yeah, these are all great things to, put in part of your daily practice.
Yeah,
so a lot of good little tidbits in there.
Yes,
so thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you.
We hope to see all of you tomorrow at the Unity March. If you need any specifics on any of those details, you can head to our website, greateruticachamber.org. As always, we have to thank our platinum level sponsors who support everything we do here at the Chamber: the Kelberman Center, Master Vito Hyundai, MVHS, Platinum Nightclub, and Staffworks. Next, in 2 weeks, we'll be joined by Christina Ferdinand from First Source Federal Credit Union. She will be our guest in 2 weeks from Wednesday, so we look forward to speaking with you then. Take care and stay kind, Utica.